Let's talk about why we really read. Today we're diving into Rita Felski's fantastic book, Uses of Literature, to explore the real reasons we fall in love with stories and why those reasons are so often overlooked.
You know that feeling, right? When you're reading and suddenly a sentence or a character hits you so hard it feels like it was written just for you. It's this powerful, almost magical connection. But here's the thing, that very feeling is often a million miles away from how we're taught to actually analyze literature.
And that's the huge gap Felski puts her finger on. We read for connection, for joy, for that jolt of me too. But for decades, a lot of literary theory has basically taught us to read like detectives. Detectives who are convinced the book is guilty of something, and it's our job to figure out what.
So let's dig into that dominant approach. Felski argues that for a really long time, literary studies has been kind of stuck in this super negative mindset, this habit of reading with suspicion. Okay, the fancy term for this is the hermeneutics of suspicion. I know, it's a mouthful. Hermeneutics is just about how we interpret things, but this specific style, it tells you to assume the book is lying to you, that its real meaning is hidden and probably something pretty negative, like upholding a corrupt ideology. The critic's job is to unmask it.
And Felski points to critic Eve Sedgwick, who just nails it. She calls it a paranoid style. Think about that for a second. It's an approach that demands you're always on guard, always assuming the worst. And, well, if you go in looking for the worst, you're probably going to find it, right? It turns the book into a suspect, not a companion.
Felski says this paranoid style has pushed us into two dead ends. On one side, you have this theological view, where art is put on such a high pedestal that it's untouchable and honestly kind of useless to our actual lives. On the other side, you have the ideological view, where art is just a symptom of some social disease that the smarty-pants critic has to diagnose. Either way, the artwork itself kind of gets lost.
So if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where Rita Felski comes in with what she brilliantly calls her unmanifesto.
She calls it an unmanifesto because most manifestos are all about tearing things down, saying no to everything. But her project is the complete opposite. It's about saying yes. It's a positive mission, trying to build a bridge between the world of high theory and, us, the people who actually read and love books.
To do this, Felski gives us several uses of literature, ways of thinking about reading that actually honor our real-life experiences. We're going to look at two of the most powerful, and the first one brings us right back to where we started. Let's talk about recognition.
Now, in some academic circles, if you say you saw yourself in a book, they might kind of roll their eyes and call it simple or narcissistic. But Felski says, no, wait a minute, this is something way, way deeper. She argues that recognition is a vital human need. It's not just about ego, it's about knowledge. It's about a book holding up a mirror and helping you finally see your own life more clearly.
And she breaks it down into two really cool ideas. First, there's self-intensification. That's the aha moment when you read something so familiar it gives you chills and you realize, whoa, I'm not the only one who felt that. But then there's self-extension, which is when you find a piece of yourself in a character who's totally different from you, someone from another century, another culture, and suddenly your own sense of self gets a little bit bigger. Felski gives this perfect historical example. It's about a play by Henrik Ibsen, Hedda Gabler. When this play first came out in the 1890s, the women in the audience had this incredibly powerful, almost explosive reaction to the main character, Hedda.
And this one quote just sums it all up. A woman was told that men couldn't possibly understand Hedda, and she shot back, "Hedda is all of us." I mean, wow. See what's happening there? It's not just, oh, that character reminds me of me. It's a moment where a personal insight, this play is telling my story, fuses with a huge social realization. This play reveals something true about the condition of all women. That's recognition in action.
All right, so that's recognition. Felski's second big use of literature is another one of those feelings that critics sometimes get a little squeamish about. It's time to talk about enchantment.
We've all been there. You're so deep into a book or a movie that the entire outside world just vanishes. The hours fly by. People could be calling your name and you wouldn't even hear them. You are just completely, totally in that world. That state of being totally absorbed, that's what Felski calls enchantment. And she's not talking about it like it's some guilty pleasure or mindless escapism. She sees it as this really profound aesthetic experience where you surrender to the story. It's that feeling when a great movie ends, the lights come up, and you feel this little pang of regret that you have to come back to reality.
But of course, this is exactly the kind of thing that makes a suspicious reader nervous. The famous playwright Bertolt Brecht, for example, he hated this. He saw an enchanted audience and basically thought they were passive zombies.
He described them as being in a trance and wanted to create art that kept you at a distance, always thinking, never just feeling.
So we've got recognition and enchantment. What's the big takeaway? Is Felski telling us to just throw critical thinking out the window? Not at all. What she's really calling for is a new kind of balance in how we approach art.
So here's her core message, boiled down. It's about combining that critical side of our brain with a genuine eagerness to listen to what a book has to say. It's about valuing our real reasons for reading, that desire for connection, that joy of getting lost in a story. It's about building better bridges and finding a positive, exciting way to talk about why art and literature truly matter in our lives.
So, to be super clear, this isn't about becoming an uncritical reader. We can't just unlearn how to analyze things. But Felski's point is that maybe, just maybe, we should also be a little suspicious of our own suspicion. And maybe we should be brave enough to face up to how much we love and are shaped by the art we connect with.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you pick up a book, how might this change the way you read it? Will you let yourself look for that spark of recognition? Will you give yourself permission to be enchanted? Because honoring those feelings, that might just be the most powerful way to read of all.